The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a 30-minute delay due to mechanical issues. Sarah Matthews sighed, clutching her boarding pass while juggling her purse and a tattered copy of The Courage to Start Over. The airport terminal buzzed with impatient travelers, but Sarah barely noticed them. Her mind was elsewhere, on the apartment she'd just left behind, on her daughter Emma waiting at her mother's house, and on the new life they were about to begin in a city where no one knew their story. If you've ever felt like life has pushed you to your breaking point, only to discover that breaking points are where new beginnings happen, this story might just change how you see the world. Before we continue, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how this journey unfolds. Sarah hadn't planned on becoming a single mother at 34. She hadn't planned on discovering her husband's affair with his 25-year-old assistant, or signing divorce papers on what would have been their 10th anniversary. She certainly hadn't planned on packing up her life and her 8-year-old daughter's belongings to move across the country for a job she wasn't sure she was qualified for. Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to Portland, the announcement jolted her back to reality. Sarah hurried toward the gate, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The flight attendant smiled sympathetically as she scanned Sarah's boarding pass. "We've had a seating change due to a family needing to sit together," the attendant explained. "You'll be in 14C now, is that all right?" Sarah nodded, too exhausted to care. She just wanted to close her eyes and wake up when this transition was over. The plane was nearly full when she boarded. She made her way down the narrow aisle, counting rows until she reached 14. A man occupied the window seat, his attention focused on a small notebook where he was sketching something. A leather messenger bag rested on the middle seat, her seat. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice barely audible above the hum of the aircraft. The man looked up, startled. His eyes were a deep brown, framed by laugh lines that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. He appeared tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion Sarah recognized all too well in her own mirror. "I'm sorry," he said, quickly moving his bag to the floor. "I wasn't expecting anyone to sit here. The flight's usually half empty." Sarah slid into the middle seat, careful to keep her elbows tucked in, creating an invisible boundary between them. She noticed a photo peeking out from his notebook, a little boy, maybe 6 or 7, with the same brown eyes as the man beside her. "Your son?" she asked, immediately regretting the intrusion. The man hesitated before nodding. "Yeah. Max. He's with his grandparents this week while I..." He trailed off, then shrugged. "While I figure some things out." Something in his voice, a familiar note of uncertainty, made Sarah look at him more closely. His wedding ring finger was bare, but with a telltale lighter band of skin. "I'm Sarah," she offered, surprising herself. "Daniel," he replied. "Daniel Reeves." The plane began its taxi down the runway, and Sarah gripped the armrests. She hated takeoffs. Daniel noticed. "Not a fan of flying?" "Not a fan of not being in control," she admitted. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his face. "I get that. More than you know." As the plane lifted into the air, Sarah felt something shift, not just the aircraft ascending, but something inside her. A tiny crack in the wall she'd built around herself since the divorce. Daniel closed his notebook and turned slightly toward her. "So, what takes you to Portland?" "A fresh start," Sarah said. "My daughter Emma and I are moving there. New job, new school, new everything." "How old is your daughter?" 8. "Going on 30, Sarah smiled, thinking of Emma's serious little face when she'd explained they were moving. "She's staying with my mom until I get settled." "What about your son?" "Max is 7, Daniel said. He's been living with me full-time for the past year, since his mom decided parenting wasn't really her thing." The bitterness in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. "That must be hard," Sarah said softly. Daniel looked out the window at the clouds below. Some days are better than others. Today's not one of the better ones. The flight attendant came by with the drink cart, momentarily interrupting their conversation. Sarah ordered a ginger ale, Daniel a black coffee. "So what do you do, Sarah?" Daniel asked after the attendant moved on. "I was a graphic designer at an advertising firm in Chicago. Now I'll be the creative director for a smaller agency in Portland. It's a step up, career-wise, but I'm terrified I'm not ready." "I doubt that," Daniel said. "You seem like someone who's more capable than she gives herself credit for." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. It had been a long time since anyone had expressed confidence in her. Her ex-husband had been an expert at subtle undermining, at making her question her abilities until she barely recognized herself. "What about you?" she asked. "I'm an architect. Or I was. Currently between firms," Daniel admitted. "I scaled back to freelance work after getting full custody of Max. Turns out architecture firms aren't thrilled about employees who have to leave at 3 p.m. for school pickup." Sarah nodded in understanding. "The working parent penalty. I know it well." "Worth it, though," Daniel said, and there was no hesitation in his voice. "Every time," Sarah agreed. They fell into an easy conversation after that, the kind that happens rarely between strangers, open, honest, without pretense. Daniel told her about growing up in Portland, about his favorite hiking trails and coffee shops. Sarah shared her fears about Emma adjusting to a new school, about being both mother and father to a child who missed her dad, even if he rarely made time to see her. "Kids are resilient," Daniel said. "More than we give them credit for. Max has had some rough patches, but he's finding his way. Emma will too." "I hope so," Sarah said. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, uprooting her like this." "You're showing her that it's never too late to start over," Daniel said. "That's a powerful lesson." The plane hit a patch of turbulence, and Sarah instinctively grabbed the nearest solid object, which happened to be Daniel's arm. She quickly let go, embarrassed. "Sorry," she mumbled. "Don't be," he said, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart beat a little faster. The captain announced they were beginning their descent into Portland. Sarah felt a strange disappointment that their conversation would soon end. "So," Daniel said, closing his notebook and tucking it into his bag. "Do you have plans for your first night in Portland?" Sarah shook her head. "Just checking into a hotel until I can look at apartments this week." Daniel hesitated, then reached for his phone. "I know this is forward, and please feel free to say no, but I know a great pizza place not far from downtown. If you're hungry after we land." Sarah surprised herself by saying yes. That pizza dinner turned into a weekend of Daniel showing Sarah around Portland. He helped her find an apartment in a neighborhood with good schools, close to a park where Emma could play. When Emma arrived the following week, she and Max hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of astronomy and their mutual experience of having one parent who had chosen to leave. 6 months later, Sarah sat on a bench in that same park, watching Emma and Max climb the jungle gym while Daniel bought ice cream from a vendor nearby. She thought about the unlikely chain of events that had brought them together, a mechanical delay, a seating change, two people at their lowest points finding each other at exactly the right moment. "Penny for your thoughts," Daniel said, handing her an ice cream cone and sitting beside her. "I was just thinking about fate," Sarah said. "Do you believe in it?" Daniel watched the children playing, his expression thoughtful. "I didn't used to. But then I got seated next to you on that flight, and now I'm not so sure." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Me neither." That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel took Sarah's hand as they sat on her small balcony, looking at the stars. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice serious. Sarah's heart raced. They had been taking things slowly, mindful of the children and their own past wounds. "What is it?" she asked. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was not a ring, as Sarah had momentarily feared. It was still too soon for that, but a key. "Move in with me," he said. "All of you. My house has a backyard for the kids, and it's in Emma's school district. We can convert the office into a bedroom for her." Sarah looked at the key, then at Daniel's hopeful face. A year ago, she had been certain her heart was too broken to ever trust again. Now, she was considering blending her little family with his. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This is a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything," Daniel said. "The four of us, it works. We work." Sarah thought of Emma's laughter, which had returned in full force since they'd moved to Portland. She thought of Max's shy smiles that had become more frequent and confident. She thought of Daniel, who had shown her that not all men were like her ex-husband, that there were still good ones who valued partnership and respect. "Yes," she said, closing her hand around the key. "Let's do it." 2 years later, Sarah stood in the backyard of what was now their home, watching as Emma helped Max with his science project. Inside, Daniel was preparing dinner, the sounds of his off-key singing drifting through the open windows. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Still can't believe a seating mix-up on a plane led to all this. Someone up there was looking out for you." Sarah smiled, typing back, "Sometimes the universe knows what we need before we do." She looked up at the sound of the back door opening. Daniel stood there, dish towel over his shoulder, watching her with the same warmth in his eyes that she'd first noticed on that flight. "Dinner's ready," he called to the kids, then walked over to Sarah, slipping an arm around her waist. "Everything okay?" Sarah nodded, leaning into him. "Everything's perfect." And it was. Not because their life together was without challenges. There were still difficult days, arguments about parenting styles, moments when past hurt surfaced unexpectedly. But they faced those challenges together, two people who had learned that sometimes, rock bottom is just the foundation for something beautiful. So if you're watching this and feeling like you're at your lowest point, remember Sarah and Daniel's story. Remember that sometimes, the universe puts exactly the right person in the seat next to yours. Sometimes, a delay isn't a setback but a setup for something wonderful. And sometimes, two broken families can come together to create something whole. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the unexpected ways love finds us. Share in the comments if you've ever experienced a chance encounter that changed your life, because maybe, just maybe, there are no chance encounters at all.